Hello and welcome or welcome back to the Import Export Hub channel, everybody. Bias Bagdan here, your host for the next couple of minutes. Thanks for joining me. And without anything else to add here, let's jump into today's topic, in which I'll cover 5 products that are worth importing from Kenya. And guys, my first recommendation comes from heading 0808. So we are talking about dates, figs, avocados, guavas, or mangoes. And we see that in 2022, Kenya's overall exports from this heading amounted to some $167 million, with the Netherlands here, the United Arab Emirates, and France as the main partners, which were followed in this top 10 list by others like, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, or Qatar here. This last one with some $3.4 million worth of imports from Kenya, which is almost $760,000 more than in 2021. As we can see here together, these top 10 partners make up for some 84% in Kenya's exports from this particular heading, quite concentrated if you ask me, particularly in what concerns the relation with the Netherlands, as I don't know, more than a fifth of Kenya's exports from this heading are towards them. But the good news here, if I could say this, is that the United Arab Emirates is catching up and increasing its imports. And if I look closely, the same goes true for France, even though in 2022 France had just 12% share in Kenya's exports from this heading. Relative to the compound annual growth rate for the last 5 years, we see only one negative figure, that of the Netherlands, some 2.7%, while on a year-on-year basis, things are a little bit more volatile, as France, Spain, Egypt, and Russia also. Russia in particular, I might add, one of Kenya's top 10 traditional partners had big negative changes. So at the end, we have this $8.4 million contraction. As for the main drivers, well, it shouldn't come as a surprise, guys, that fresh or dried avocados were the main one for both the Netherlands and Egypt, as Kenya is a well-known supplier of fresh avocados. Moving now, guys, to my second recommendation. We have here heading 2836, carbonates, basically, with almost $104 million worth of exports in 2022, some $43 million more than in the previous year, with India, Thailand, and South Africa as the main partners, followed in this top 10 list by other countries like, I don't know, Tanzania, China, or Congo. This last one managing to import from Kenya some $1.6 million worth of goods from this heading. As we can see here, 2022 registered the largest amount relative to this 2018-2022 time frame, with a compound annual growth rate of almost 9%. With both India and Thailand as big contributors to this performance. While on a year-on-year basis, we have some $43 million more exports, as I've said, with only Congo from this top 10 list having registered a negative change, some $1.3 million, which is almost negligible. As for the main drivers, guys, well, for both India and China, we have subheading 283620. So we are talking about disodium carbonate, which is a very versatile compound used in a variety of industries. Jumping now to my third recommendation, we have here heading 0802. So basically, we are talking about other nuts with some $103 million worth of exports in 2022, from which almost 53% were directed towards the United States, 12% towards China, and some 11% towards Germany, while the rest until, I don't know what, 94% towards countries like, I don't know, Vietnam, Spain, or Slovakia. This last one managing to import from Kenya in 2022 some $1.12 million worth of goods. Now, on a year-on-year basis, we have a 7% increase in relative terms, or $6.7 million in absolute ones, with China contributing a lot to this positive result, as it managed to import with some $8.5 million more than in the previous year. And it's worth following up if this becomes a trend or it's just an opportunistic approach, as the figures from the previous year are not really supporting any organic growth. As for the main drivers, well, for both the United States and Japan, here we have the same subheading, so 080262, so we are talking about fresh or dried macadamia nuts, shelled. Moving now, guys, to my fourth recommendation. We have here heading to 101. So we are talking about extracts, essences and concentrates of coffee, tea or mate, with some $31 million worth of exports for 2022, with Ireland here, the United States and Singapore as well as the main partners, let's say, followed in this top 10 list by others like, I don't know, India, Mexico, or Germany here. This last one managing to import some $500,000 worth of goods in 2022. Again, we see that these top 10 partners weigh a lot in terms of concentration, if you want. Cumulatively, they make up for some 91%, with Ireland and the United States alone making for some 60%. In terms of compound annual growth rate, at least for the 5 years, we see that the percentage is positive, some 7%, and it would have been even larger if it wasn't for 2022. But anyways, this is how things worked out. While on a year-on-year basis, we have a 50% increase in relative terms, or some $10.3 million, if I were to put a dollar figure to this percentage, as Ireland, Kenya's traditional number one partner, as we can see here, increased its imports with almost $5.5 million. And guys, speaking of Ireland here, we see that subheading 210120 drove most of the imports from Kenya, and the same goes true for India. And lastly, guys, my fifth recommendation for you comes from heading 0603, La Creme de la Creme, if you want, as we're speaking about cut flowers and flower buds. So if you're working in this industry, Kenya is a good place to source. As we can see here, Kenya's exports from this heading amounted to some $629 million in 2022. Unfortunately, almost $100 million less relative to the previous year, so 2021. But my guess is that 2021 was an outlier, and from the data I have, it suggests that we're witnessing a regression to the mean for these exports, and 2023 figures could land close to the $600 million figure. Now, in terms of trading partners, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia are the most important ones. Somewhat 60% of exports are towards them, while the rest of 27% goes to the rest of 7, like, I don't know, Norway, Australia, or Switzerland. This last one we see here managed to import some $10 million, and on a year-on-year basis, we have a big volatility, and not necessarily in relative terms, but absolute ones, with big contractions concerning the Netherlands, UK, and the Russian Federation, even though the exports towards Kazakhstan, as we can see here, increased with almost $18 million. Personally, another thing that I would follow up as a Kenyan fresh flower exporter is the dynamic with Germany, as it lost the third spot held between 2018 and 2021 to Saudi Arabia. So yeah, it's worth knowing if this is a structural change or just a temporary situation. My guess, if you ask me, is that this is a structural change, and I would focus more on emerging markets like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kazakhstan, why not? And I will try to decrease my dependency on the EU market. As for the main drivers, well, for both Saudi Arabia and Kazakhstan, here we have the same one, 060311. So we are talking about fresh cut roses and buds suitable for bouquets or ornamental purposes. And guys, with this last recommendation being covered as well, that's it for today. Thank me by hitting those small buttons below this video. I hope you liked it, and as usual, until next time, keep your business safe. Thanks.